I would now like to introduce our guest speaker, Bea Boccalandro. Bea helps organisations and people ignite purpose at work. She's the author of Do Good at Work, How Simple Acts of Social Purpose Drive Success and Wellbeing, and I have her book handy here in my hand. It's been praised as life-changing and life-enhancing. Bea has been published in a long list of notable publications, including the Harvard Business Review and the Boston Globe, and has featured in international media outlets. Bea has 2 decades of experience helping businesses make customer interactions more human, products more inclusive, operations more environmentally sustainable, marketing more charitable, and of course, making more work more meaningful. Please welcome Bea to the stage.
Thank you, Antoinette. Thank you, Antoinette. Wow, it's great to be here. What a great room. 15 years ago, a woman was shopping for a snowboarding jacket at a store in Washington, D.C. And the sales attendant said, "Hey, you know that jacket you're trying on is 0 carbon footprint, and 90% of the material is recycled." The woman thought the jacket was a little pricey, but went ahead and bought it, and soon was snowboarding. And she thought, that was a pleasant shopping experience, but not much more. She was wrong. It was a lot more. So first of all, she probably did more good than she knows, because she wasn't just in that instance preventing carbon from going into the atmosphere or plastic from going into the ocean. She was helping that brand continue that environmental practice, and other brands follow suit. So really, when you think about it, she helped to tilt standard business practices toward putting less plastic in the ocean and less carbon in the atmosphere from there on out. So in that regard, she was probably wrong that it was no big deal. But she was wrong in another sense, which is the sense that I want to focus on. It turns out that psychologists have collected ample data that when we do what they call a pro-social act, so this is just an act of contribution to someone else or to a cause out there, we get rewarded with oxytocin, with dopamine, with serotonin. They know this from functional MRIs they put on our brains. And you know what these are? These are the hormones, the happy hormones that make sex and chocolate wonderful. So she got happier. The other thing is that she got healthier. So there's a study done in Harvard with undergraduates, and when they do a pro-social act, they notice that their T-cell response was stronger. So literally their immune system was stronger. Also, less likely to have a heart attack in the next year, less likely to have mental health issues. So she actually got healthier and happier. What about the sales associate? This is true of him as well, because this is a pro-social act that he did as well by selling that jacket. But he has an additional advantage, which is that he's at work, so he has elevated work up to not working for pay, but working for something more meaningful, and this changes everything. This makes work be more fun, you're more engaged, you're actually more productive. A study done at University of Chicago found like over 20% more productive. So when Paul got up here and said it feels good, it absolutely does. There are studies behind all of these results. If you're anything like the college students I teach, right now you might be thinking, oh, come on, Bea, really? Such a small act is going to have all these positive effects? That's ridiculous. Well, the data is clear on this. The studies that back this up, almost all of them involve just 5 minutes of a pro-social act, 5 minutes of a contribution or less, or $5. And by the way, they were Canadian dollars, so not the big expensive American dollar. Just $5 will get you there. It turns out that pro-social acts are a little bit binary. The power in them is reorienting toward contribution. How much is less important? So, what store is this? Does anybody have a guess? Just shout it out. I didn't have a picture of the one in DC, so this is one here in Melbourne. Who? Patagonia, yes. Now, if you're familiar with Patagonia, they sell outdoor clothing, and they are very much into ESG. They are the leaders. They are responsible for organic cotton being on the market. They're the ones who figured out how to turn plastic into fleece. So they are very extreme on ESG. I'm not suggesting that all businesses become Patagonia. I don't think that's the case. But I put them up here because they are a good model for ESG to learn from. Now, anybody have a guess who the snowboarder is? It is, yes, that's me. I put myself up there because I want you to know that 15 years ago, I was already helping companies do good. And even I didn't connect the dots. Even I didn't understand what exactly took place in that Washington, D.C. store. I thought that I was making a cognitive decision, that I was deciding with my brain to pay a premium for a jacket in order to help my nieces and nephews have oceans to frolic in 40 years from now. That's what I thought I was doing. But actually, it may have been the dopamine that bought that jacket. That's what we're figuring out. That we are so inclined to pro-social behavior that most of it happens subconsciously. So when we talk about ESG, we think it's this construct that happens in boardrooms, but it is fueled by something much more primal, much more vital, much more visceral, and frankly, semi-automatic. Like, we are not aware of how powerful these pro-social acts are. So the reason ESG exists is not because there's a bunch of business people that decided, let's go do ESG, that might be part of it, but the reason it exists is much more visceral. Now, what is ESG? It's really anything a company does to support a societal cause. So it can be the application of it can be the measurement of it can be the reporting of it can be the consideration business partners or where they invest. Other terms that refer to ESG are corporate social responsibility, corporate citizenship, and if you're confused, we all are, okay? There's a lot of terms out there, but I want to try to bring this together. It's true that different terms come from different sources. So ESG originates from the investor community, and sustainability originates from the environmental movement. So, this is like investors and hippies. These are two very different groups. But the only thing they have in common is that they're human. And by the way, that's what brings us all together. This is what we're discovering. So as the terms evolve, they basically are pointing to the same mountaintop. They're all saying the same thing to businesses, which I think can be summarized as, don't make any of the world's problems any worse, and choose one, at least, and make it better. So let's play with this a little bit. Okay, at your tables, you're gonna have 2 minutes. This is a flash exercise, okay? You're gonna come up with as many examples of ESG as you can. 2 minutes, have someone take notes and write down as many examples of ESG as you can and assign someone to report them out, okay? Okay, wrap up your brilliant list addition. Okay, so raise your hand if you have at least 2 on your list. Okay, all right, what were you guys talking about? Really? Not 2? Movies? You have any movie recommendations? Okay, raise your hand if you have 3 on your list. Okay, 4? 50? You got 50? Can anybody beat 50? You are on your way to a yacht. Okay, we need a microphone over here. We need a microphone. A sustainable yacht. Okay, you guys, take note. Here are 50 examples of ESG practices.
Oh, 50 50 ideas. I certainly didn't write 50 of them down. I can't type quickly. I'm not a millennial. We had inclusive employment, social procurement, micro-mobility, inclusive employment, DE&I, responsible investing, responsible sourcing, circular economy, modern slavery, board diversity, transparency, community engagement, philanthropy, ethical leadership, CO2, and there was about another 10 or 12.
Okay, that is pretty darn good. Let's give them a hand. Wow. Okay. That's fantastic. So you get the idea. There is a constellation of opportunities here to do ESG. So everything from diversity, equity, and inclusion to partnering with Howard, okay, on the homeless situation. If ESG does these great things for employees and for customers, you know, it makes them happier and healthier, shouldn't this affect business performance? It absolutely does. So there's tons of evidence, as you can tell from the footnote on this slide, and this is just a little piece of the evidence. If anybody needs evidence, I can send you tons of it, okay? So there's three main areas that ESG helps. First of all, it helps with employee productivity and retention. It also helps with recruitment. So this is actually a really big one. So it turns out that when we feel our jobs matter, we perform better, and we don't even know we're performing better. It feels effortless. It's like flow. So Adam Grant, who is a Wharton professor and obviously a genius because he endorsed my book, he did research on workers. The control group didn't get any better in terms of performance. The group that did something pro-social increased their productivity by almost 200%. And when he went back to them and said, oh, isn't this incredible that you guys are producing so much more, you're working so much harder, all because you know that your work matters? And they said, we're not producing more. Who says we're producing more? They didn't even feel it. But the effect is there. Sales, huge amounts of data on sales, a long-term study that published in Harvard Business Review, 6 years. The companies that grew the most based on sales were strong in ESG. It surprised the researchers. They weren't expecting that, but that's what they found. So does it affect the bottom line? Yes, absolutely. So if you look at the full complement of studies out there, the vast majority show that it does. It is possible to find a study or two out there that doesn't show that ESG helps performance. They tend to be the low rigor studies. And one reason for this, and this is the caveat I'm going to share with you, is that it might be that the ESG is missing something. And what is this something? So if you have this something, you, on average, are going to perform 6% better than the market if your ESG has this something. If you don't do any ESG at all, so you obviously don't even have this something, you're going to perform about 3% worse than the market. So anybody want to take a guess what this something is? Because we have some insiders, because that list was way good. So anybody want to take a guess? Materiality. So what is materiality? Materiality means that you're focusing on something that your stakeholders care about, and more importantly, directly affects the success of the business. So Patagonia is really smart to focus on the natural environment because they sell what you use to surf and what you use to ski and what you use to hike. And so their stakeholders care about the environment. But what's more is if there's no snow because of climate change, they cannot sell a snowboarding jacket. So, and my publisher focuses on literacy because if people don't read, they're not going to sell any books. That is materiality. Now, it's true that if it's, again, 9% percentage point difference in returns if you have a material ESG versus no ESG. But this is really important. Even poorly done ESG is better than nothing. So let's say that you do immaterial ESG. Let's say that Patagonia focused on literacy, because that's what, you know, that's what they decided to do. They're still going to do better than the market a little bit, not a full percentage point, but they're certainly going to do a lot better, 3.5 percentage points on average, than a company that does no ESG. So materiality is better, but it's still better to do non-material ESG than nothing. So ESG is heavily criticized. Raise your hand if you've seen some of this. Have you seen like the critique? Okay. Yeah, a lot of it is well-deserved. We have companies saying they're doing things. You look under the hood and there's nothing there. We have a whole bunch of different indices. It's hard to tell which one to use, right? We have a mess of terms, as you know. So a lot of issues there with ESG. And all of them, all of them are typical of any new business practice. So when you look at this list, does it make you think of anything? I think it looks like a spa. Like if you tell someone, you know what, you do this for a few minutes this week, you're gonna be healthier, you're gonna be happier, and you're gonna be in a position to be more successful in life. And that is what ESG feels like to people. It feels like a spa. So there is a question out there, which is like, will ESG be around in 5 years or 10 years? It's just a trendy thing that's gonna go away. I'm here to tell you, people are not going to give up the spa. Consumers are not suddenly going to go like, oh, it's okay. I don't need to shop my values. Oh, it's okay. I don't really care if there's all this plastic in the ocean and I'm responsible for putting it in there. This is not going to go backwards. It is way too powerful. There are innovations that are just fated to be part of history because they are too big a human upgrade. And this is one. We don't even realize, again, a lot of this is subconscious, we don't even realize how big an upgrade is. But the younger generations, per Paul's story, do. They have become aware of how much they care. And so we know, for example, that 10 years ago, 25% of consumers looked at a product's environmental footprint before buying it, and now it's 50%. It might change names, it will change form, it will get better, but ESG is here to stay. So in summary, ESG is infinitely varied. That list was amazing, but it's not even a complete list, okay? There are a million different ways to do this. It's good for people. It's good for business. It's better if it's material. It's here to stay. And I hope that you find it to be an exciting opportunity. One more thing about ESG that no one talks about. Here's another benefit. It turns out that ESG helps you do tricks. Like these sports tricks, okay? So this is me. Now, I am now wearing the next generation of jacket because the one that I bought 15 years ago started falling apart in about 10 years. So I took it in and they re-seamed everything. They fixed it for free, Patagonia did. But then 3 years later, it started having issues again. So they took the old one, said, we will turn this into another product, thus reducing what ends up in landfill and reducing how much plastic we produce. And they gave me a credit that covered about 70% of the cost of this one. So I'm here in the next generation Patagonia, and I am now going to show you the power of ESG. So here I go. I'm taking off. This is in Utah. This is last year. Okay, I'm picking up speed, going. I'm going to slow down here so that you see this trick. This trick is incredible. So ESG does not help with everything. It can't help my snowboarding, but it helps with a lot of things. Thank you.